Oh, g'day. Welcome back to Griffith's Garden. Hey, do you ever grown your own tomatoes? I'm going to take you on a little journey this year as I repeat my annual challenge of trying to grow the best tomatoes I can in my own back garden. Super excited to share the experience that I have with all of you and show you that growing tomatoes in your own backyard can be super rewarding and a very tasty experience at the same time. I was just in here having a look at our seedlings. So many people will struggle with growing their own vegetables in their own backyard, but especially tomatoes, but mostly due to lack of knowledge or lack of confidence, whether it be spinach like we showed the other day, or potatoes or tomatoes. One of the hardest, because I've been there too. They don't always work. So let's have a little bit of a look at the seedlings that we have in here, and then I'm going to show you what I'm going to do for this summer in Australia growing tomatoes. Before I was rudely interrupted with the trusty old flat battery. I'm sure many of you have come across that experience. Several things you can do to make your tomatoes grow or enjoy the experience of growing your own tomatoes. And one extension of that is to grow your own seedlings. So saving your own seeds is definitely something that is rewarding, and you also know what you're getting. So we have a little plan for this summer. So I'll show you what we have that we've saved from last year. So in here, in our little greenhouse at the back, what you can see is different stages of growth, but you can see that they're all labelled. We have we do a lot of tomato products from our tomatoes, so there's a range of different varieties in here, which is another great thing to do with growing tomatoes. Pick what you like, or grow what you like, and let your taste buds tell you what it is that you like, but also the products that you make out of it. So in here we have determinate and indeterminate tomatoes, and I talked about that before. We'll go through that as we grow the tomatoes this year. We have both. So some people call it a stick tomato, bush tomato. We have Roma tomatoes, which are good for tomato paste, passata and things like that. And a couple of other different varieties, San Marzano as well in that space. But we also have things like cherry tomatoes and beefsteak or heirloom tomatoes as well. Now, I grew up with heirloom tomatoes not being heirloom tomatoes. They were just tomatoes. So, yes, I've grown a couple of tomatoes in my time, but that's our seedlings that we're going to be putting out pretty soon, actually. A couple of volunteer things that we dug up, and I'll show you in a moment. But over here we also have, we have a very short season in the cold part of Australia where we live. So sadly, things like pumpkins, or some people call them squash, but butternut pumpkins, Jap, or Queensland blue. There's even some corn growing in there, and what have we got here? That's another pumpkin, but we struggle with enough of a season, so I'm not really used to that, but I've been living here for 5 years, and I've come to terms with the fact that sadly I need to plant seedlings for things that I would never normally plant seedlings for. They would always come from a seed. That's the consequence of living in a cold environment. But anyway, it's all fun and rewarding at the end of the year. So let's go and have a look where these tomatoes are going to go. So you're probably going to see this patch a little bit over the next few months, because this is where the tomatoes are going to go, amongst other things. Capsicums mainly, but not pumpkins and things like that. But you'll see happen here is the significance of how to get good tomatoes growing. And how do you do that? Start with soil. Without good soil, the rest of it, you might as well not bother. If you want to grow good tomatoes, come along with me this year and I'll show you some of what I've learned over the years about growing good tomatoes. Start with soil, plenty of water and frequent watering, as well as how to support them. Depending on what they are, they need different levels of support. Here comes the dog to provide a little bit of support himself. And you too can get some fantastic tomatoes to eat this summer. And you can see the leftovers, regrowth from the seeds from last year. And some of these we've dug up and turned into seedlings, and I'll come back in here. There is one problem with all of that, and that is replanting in the same area. So from a disease perspective, not the best, but in a backyard, sometimes you don't have too many choices. So we'll cross some of those topics. We'll cross some of those topics as we go through the year. Pests and disease. I'll show you what I've learnt over the years to prevent or treat those sorts of things. How to support your tomatoes, whether it be a trellis, a stick, simple wires, or various different other techniques. And this we should see getting probably 100 kilos of tomatoes easily out of here, as well as a whole bunch of stuff on the ground which are great for chickens. So this is the winter garden for the chickens, prepared for summer for the vegetables. And that's the fantastic thing about having a couple of different areas in your backyard to grow vegetables. If you have chickens, they benefit each other. So I thought I'd show you a little close-up of the soil from here. And what you can see is, well, that's a potato, which we did not grow out here, as is that. And somehow there's a whole load of kale out here as well. Black kale. Well, actually, I think it might be red Russian or something like that. But compliments of the chickens, we've got all that. But you can see all this greenery. That's mostly tomatoes. Absolutely loaded with tomatoes. Self-seeded from... we had so many tomatoes in here last year, it wasn't funny. We could not eat them all. This corner here is absolutely brilliant with... this is where the chickens' house was for the winter. And it was overgrown with tomatoes. So these are all self-sown. What you'll see down here as well is dill. Self-sown dill. Absolutely brilliant. So that shows you how you can grow your own tomatoes, how you can save your own tomatoes, and what you do is you end up with tomatoes that are localized in terms of environment, conditions, soil, and they get used to the weather patterns, etc., and they get better and better and better. Natural selection, right? So here's the soil I was talking about earlier. It's a little bit crumbly, so there's more organic matter to get in here over the next few years, but it'll till up, so you can't really plant. Well, you can plant into it, but it's pretty solid, so it'll get tilled up, and it should be nice and soft by the time we get to it in a couple of days' time. Sadly, I've stepped on, in this process, I've stepped on a couple actually, capsicum plants that have come up. So again, we had capsicums down that end, and they grew really well. Orange ones, red ones, well, orange and red, they're two different ones, but red and green are the same ones. I think it's a pumpkin. I think it's a pumpkin. So yeah, there's heaps of self-sown stuff out here, but it'll all be, next time you see it, you'll see me in here digging away, and it'll look quite different in a couple of days' time. So that's what we have out here. I don't know, what is it, probably 4 by 8, so metres, 32 square metres, roughly 30 square metres, which is, I don't know, 12, 24, lots of square feet, right? And all these hoses, that's our watering system, that's just sitting up here like this as this time of the year. So this will all change over the next few days while we till it up and then get the seedlings out here. Hopefully this weekend, otherwise in a couple of days after that. So thanks for watching. I'll see you at the next step. Wow, amazing. First time. Okay, 3 wheels. So reverse. So there we have a rotary hoe, or a tiller, whatever you want to call it. It's a rental, you can probably tell by all the bits and pieces hanging off it. But this is what we're going to dig the garden up with this year. And prepare for a tomato patch. So I'll just pack this trailer away and then get ready to do some digging. So there we have it. You wouldn't have seen right at the end, but the lever for raising and lowering the handle, not sideways, but raising and lowering, that's just, the weld is broke. So thankfully I'm pretty finished. So hopefully you saw, going over this a couple of times, yeah, this needs to be tilled. It's simple, because it is still not organic enough just to be no-till gardening. So I did it with a smaller rotary hoe last year, and a ton of weeds come back, but then we add organic matter, right? So it's all about getting this right, or as best you can. And it doesn't look real flush here just yet. Can't make soil overnight. It definitely takes time. And this has got all sorts of clay and bits and pieces from when they built the house there. But it's a good start. We'll mulch this. We'll put nutrients in it. We'll put organic fertiliser in it before we plant out. And I'll probably go over it with the little tiller again before we do that, and sort of mound up ready for where the plants are going to go. So the other thing you can see across here is the variation in colour. Well, not so much colour, but how dark the soil is. This corner here in particular is very good, and along the fence it's very good. Up the top is very good. But just here, not so good. Well, not as good. I say that because it's not dark. The darker your soil, the better it is. The chickens, and you saw their house before, I made that, and it was just over there against the wall. And so their nest was here. It obviously is shaded from the afternoon sun. And so they really liked this area. There's a lot of chicken manure in there. Along the fence, we put shade structures along there for the chickens, and they lived in that for a little bit. But first and foremost, it's about compost. Right? What do you do to make your soil better? So the best way to make your soil better is to add good things to it, whether it be compost that you buy, organic compost that you buy in bags or in bulk. And we have done that here because we needed so much, bought it in bulk to take it from pretty much dead suburban backyard soil to, you know, something that looks a little better. Like I said, there's more to go. Or you can make your own compost. And we do that, but nowhere near enough to spread, you know, barrow loads across here. So compost from the bulk suppliers, as well as mushroom compost is in here as well. And hopefully we don't have the same problems that we're having with the broad beans and the peas. I don't know if it's the mushroom compost, but it might be. Anyway, we're pretty much done with this now. We're going to be planting out soon, so in here will be some fantastic tomatoes. In here will be some fantastic capsicums, different varieties, bell peppers, banana capsicums, so the longer ones as well as the typical ones that you find in the supermarket. We call them capsicums. Some people call them peppers. The same thing, right? So we'll put a load of fertiliser in here, as I say, organic fertiliser. We use dynamic lifter, which is pelletised chicken manure. We also crush up our eggs that we have used, so the eggshells. We spread that around. And the other thing we do is put coffee grounds in here. So between those three things, and we can also put in some fish emulsion, liquid fish emulsion. Just water it in, right? Sea salt, Charlie carp, that type of thing. And that helps the microbes come back. Obviously I've disturbed the soil quite significantly. And there was a few worms in here, but at the end of the day, you couldn't really plant it in this as it was. So for an outside bed like this, I think it largely still needs to be tilled up so that we can get fantastic crops in here. So come along for the journey. This is pretty much step one after figuring out where you want to grow them. You can see that there's plenty of sunlight in here with the exception of that bottom corner later on. It's just after midday in summertime here in Australia. So sunshine on top of brilliant soil, great nutrients and fertilisers, fantastic support for the right types of tomatoes that you want to grow, and you too can have delicious tomatoes all summer long. So it's the next day now, and if you can't tell, a little bit warmer, and quite windy as well. So in terms of quality of day, it's very ordinary. It's just about 30 degrees. It probably is 30 degrees by now. Celsius, that's mid to high 80s if you're talking Fahrenheit, and windy as heck. So nonetheless, vegetables need to be grown. So these are the compost bins that we're going to pull a bit of amendments out to drop into the tomato patch. I talked about compost. It can't really grow enough, so we bring a load in, but we put on what we can. So we're just going to load up a few wheelbarrow loads and spread it on the patch over there, and till it all in. And you'll be you'll be wondering where the footage of that is. Well, good old hardware overheated, and I have zero footage of the rotary hoe of the patch over there. So anyway, I'll push on with trying to put some compost loads over there. Hopefully this stuff is going to be okay. Could be all sorts of stuff in here. So if we want to come and have a bit of a look. So I thought I'd show you a quick look of the compost pile. To be honest, there's a fair bit of mushroom compost in here, and as you can see from the roots here, it looks like some potatoes have decided to grow in there. We've got plenty of potatoes already, so newspaper on top. This is spent grain from another thing that I do, and a load of compost, mushroom compost with obviously various other bits and pieces in it. So better than nothing. Not necessarily the best thing you'll find, but hey, you work with what you got, and there's plenty of bugs and that running around in here, so that'll be fantastic for the end result if you want to grow great tomatoes. So I'll get digging and load up the wheelbarrow. Right, if we don't get blown away, we might get something in the wheelbarrow. And we're obviously going to have to pick a bit up off the ground, but you know what? Starting the next compost pile. Oh, look at this. You want to know if you've got good soil? Worms. If you've got worms in your soil, then they're doing great things. So to see them in there is fantastic. They will obviously spread out and do their thing over in the patch itself. Oh, look, there's the potatoes. We don't want more potatoes growing. Probably a little bit wasteful, this, with the compost, in a way, but as I was saying before, whatever's left on the ground is the beginnings of the next pile, so it's not necessarily lost at all. It's like a inoculator for the next batch. So we'll load this one up and tip it across in the patch. Alright, so let's see if we can't get most of this in the wheelbarrow. And on the bottom you'll see there's a load of bark chips, so there's no real problem with that. It's all organic matter, it'll all break down over time, and you end up with fantastic soil as you build it. It's almost impossible to get fantastic soil in a short period of time. You definitely have to build your soil. And if you want to grow the best tomatoes in summertime, you need great soil. And we're just about there, I think. The rest of it can spread out and be the base for the next one that we put on. Don't want that in there either. All right, let's go and take this to the... We do not want that in there. So let's go and take it to the tomato patch.
It's just a big chunk of the mushroom compost. So I'll spread this out a little bit. Just try to get it in this area of soil that's not the best. And then we'll put the rotary hoe over it. We don't need a stick like that. Sticks aren't going to bother anybody, but you know what? You can get them out. It's all fine. Right, that's one. So we'll go and get one or two more and go from there. And here comes load number 3. Now you missed out seeing it yesterday, but sort of that area of the garden is sort of, this patch is quite good in terms of richness in the soil already, and that's from what we put in it last year and also what the chickens did, because they were housed up against this wall, and you can still see a lot of the straw from where they were from the way we bedded them into their house. So this is just more of this compost mix, mushroom compost I should say. Some of you might be wondering, why is there so much junk in the compost? Why doesn't he sift it? I don't see any point in sifting compost. You're going to lose so much goodness out of this. Stuff that's already breaking down, sticks, hold all the bugs and the microbes and the nutrients and so on. Put it back in the soil, let it finish doing its job. All we really want to do is get a reasonable spread, and then until it'll work it all into the soil. Paper, doesn't matter, it's all organic. That's rule number 1, right? Organic. Even old root balls. What I don't want in here, though, is anything that's going to actually grow from like a cutting type thing. So succulent or that type of thing. That vine that was over the back of the compost bins. Not sure, but I'm thinking that might it might grow in here. So no big deal, I suppose. We should be able to pull it out. But anyway, that's what we've got in terms of compost. I'll get the rotary hoe over the top of this and just give it a bit of a run. It's very windy from that direction today, so hopefully it's not too dusty. Otherwise the the neighbours might get a bit upset, and rightly so. So we wanted to get this planted out today, but I don't think we will, to be honest. There's a little bit too much to do. But there's what I don't want growing in here as an example. So soil is where your tomatoes are going to grow. The better your soil, the better your tomatoes. And then it just comes down to water and looking after them, including support from things like wind as well. So I'll go and get the rotary hoe sorted out and start digging it in. Amazing, right? And there you have it. Beautifully worked in. So what do you think? Next steps to put out the irrigation lines, or at least identify where our rows are going to be for each of the different types of tomatoes and also the capsicums that are going in here. maybe lettuce along this side here. It tends to like that area. So mark out the rows, put some pelletised chicken manure, eggshells, coffee grounds, all that sort of thing in here. Bring the irrigation lines back in, peg it down a little bit. If I can get some weed mat in here, I'll use that as well. I'm not entirely sure if I have enough to do much with. And that'll come in the next video. So I need to pack this thing up and take it back in the morning. So I need to give it a bit of a clean to make sure it doesn't go back with my dirt on it, because the last thing I want is somebody else's dirt coming in here, which could have any sort of disease in it. So in a way, biosecurity type thing. So I need to load that up and take it back in the morning. So the main part about growing good tomatoes, not just tomatoes, but good vegetables in your own patch over summer, or winter for that matter, is to start with fantastic soil. This is a good start. It's got a long way to go before it's, you know, super duper and full of compost and other organic materials, but you know, it's a decent start. And you'll see as we go through the year how well this good soil produces great vegetables. So thanks very much. That's it from Griffith's Garden for today.